Why hello, my fairy tale things. I'm here today in the Sonic corner, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise, as I love the Sonic Jakks Pacific figures. I've talked about him a bunch, and today I want to give you my top 10 list, but it's not going to be exclusive to just the Jakks Pacific figures. It will include all of the Sonic action figures produced throughout the years. But before we jump into the list and ranking, I want to give you a bit of my history and background with Sonic toys, because it was just a few years ago that I made the decision to sell my Sonic toy collection. Being a Sonic fan in the late 2010s was an agonizing experience. I remember waking up every day being excited for Sonic Forces, and I think that game underdelivered in more than one way. The cancellation of the long-running Archie Sonic comics was also just a big gut punch. That's not to say that everything from that time period was awful. I remember being amazed by Sonic Mania, trying out the demo at San Diego Comic-Con that year, and knowing that was going to be an instant classic. It was also the same year I went to the Sonic Live Symphony, one of the best concerts in my life. But to me, nothing will be more disappointing than the way Sonic merchandise was handled in the late 2010s. After a run of relatively good toys, the Sonic license landed in the hands of Tomy. And I was excited because I actually collected the Tomy Zootopia toys, a pretty fantastic line of figures, all things considered, that had vehicles, playsets. I did a whole video on the Tomy Zootopia line, so do watch that if you want to know what Tomy is capable of. But those Sonic stuff was just not good. The figures themselves were pretty rough, and the distribution was horrific. Trying to find these figures, especially some of the later modern waves, as the Toys R Us stores were all going out of business in my area, was just a complete headache. So I gave up on Sonic collecting. Many of the figures, the older figures, had crazy aftermarket prices. And when I heard that Jakks Pacific was getting the Sonic line and starting over with Shadow, Sonic, Tails, Eggman, I'm like, here we go again. Another company gonna take a shot and give up on the license. I'm not interested. Well, here we are, half a decade later, and I think it's safe to say that the Jakks Pacific Sonic toy line is one for the ages. When it's canceled, it will be there with Playmate Star Trek, Palisades Muppets among the pantheon of great toy lines for licenses. It's amazing to be able to collect these and build out the full world of Sonic. It's truly been an amazing line. Jakks Pacific also wisely chose to continue the small 3 to 4 inch format that Jazzwares and Tomy had made previously, as to not alienate new collectors. They also really lived up to that format's potential with amazing playsets and vehicles. But the true gem of the Jakks line was those 4-inch figures. They originally started out as simple bendy figures, but would quickly become what I consider to be the best deluxe action figure line on the market. Many of these figures are even better than modern Marvel Legends figures, if you'd believe that or not. So you'll see some of those on the list, and you'll see some other surprises as well. I actually can't think of a single bad Jakks Pacific Sonic figure. They're all pretty decent. So without further ado, I now present to you my top 10 Sonic action figures of all time. And as you watch, let me know in the comments what your top 10 figures are and what your favorite Sonic collecting memories are. Alright, as Sonic himself would say, when accompanied by his great bandmates, Maniac and Sonia in Sonic Underground, it's juice and jam time. And starting things off is Gerald Robotnik, at the time of recording this video, the newest Jakks Pacific release. Now, why did I choose Gerald over good old Eggy here? Because on a technical level, they're the same figure. You can see the family resemblance, but the head sculpt is phenomenal and looks just like Jim Carrey, and the articulation is pretty amazing. We're looking at some serious Marvel Legends type stuff here, for figures that retail for about $5 to $10 cheaper than Marvel Legends figures, which is very impressive. So I have no complaints with the sculpt and articulation, and I had a tough time picking before making this video. But I went with Gerald because he's a character we've never got before, and he's a character I figured we would never get. SEGA is very strict with the Sonic characters. They have all of these rules and regulations when it comes to Sonic and the gang. And Gerald Robotnik in the games, for one, he's dead. He only appears in the games via video archival recording. The character is deceased by the time the game is started. And he appears in some pretty dark scenes, definitely some of the darker, more mature content for the Sonic games. So considering the character is somewhat obscure and connected to some dark scenes, I figured he was a no-go from SEGA. Despite his limited appearance in the games, Gerald is an integral character to the Sonic lore, and absolutely needed for any display, especially if you want a Shadow the Hedgehog themed display. And that alone justifies this character's existence as a toy. And considering we had gone 20 years without a single piece of Gerald merchandise, just made me convinced that he was a no-go character. Well, Sonic 3, the movie, comes around and gives us a very new take on the Gerald character, and with that comes a figure. But the figure can double as a game and comics figure. This is exactly what Gerald looks like in the Sonic Adventure games as well as the comics. So this figure is truly a win-win for all sides of the Sonic community. Whether you like the games, the comics, or the movies, this is a figure that everyone's going to want to add to their collection. Yeah, he is a fat old man. It's not the most exciting toy, but he's also important and essential to the Sonic lore. And I love seeing human characters added to the Sonic line. There's a lot of humans in the Sonic lore, and for a long time, all we really got was toys of Eggman. Now, with Eggman here, another reason why I did not include him on this list, despite being a pretty fantastic figure, is when you compare him to the Eggman figure we got for Sonic Movie 2. Now, you could make a case that this shows how far Jakks Pacific has come in just a couple of years, because these figures are only separated by a couple dollars at retail, and the detail on them is astonishing. Look at the shoulders, the physique of the new one is much more human compared to the original, which is definitely more archaic looking in design. However, I would argue that the Sonic 2 figure has a better posture. You know, this one's kind of like, he's got these funky hands, he looks like he's doing a maniacal laugh, and this one is just, you know, standing there as Robotnik would. Of course, he's got his piping hot cup of coffee from the Mean Bean Espresso, which is a lovely touch and reference to Agent Stone, whereas the new version of the figure does not even have a gripped hand. He can't even hold the coffee drink, which I think is a shame. So, Jakks, I would love to see a new Robotnik that uses this figure's base, but with maybe some gripping hands and a cup of coffee, because, come on, Robotnik needs his mean espresso beans to do his evil plans. Okay, moving on to number 9, I went with Stixs from the Sonic Boom toy line. You may be shocked to see a Tomy figure on this list after I just kind of trash-talked the company, but Stixs is from the initial first wave of Sonic toys, and they were promising. They were some pretty good figures. Stixs here does look just like the animation model from the Cartoon Network Boom show, and I appreciate that they made the female character that was invented for the show. Often the Sonic cartoons invented their own female characters before the games kind of had a more diverse cast. We had Sally and Bunny with the original cartoon, and then Sonia with Sonic Underground, and with Boom, we got Stixs here. I think Stixs was also a part of the games, so she was kind of, you know, not just TV show exclusive, but a part of the whole Boom multimedia franchise. But the point is, she's not part of the regular Sonic cast. She is an exclusive character to the Boomverse, which makes me think this is a character we actually may never see in toy form again, because SEGA has those weird rules, and I would assume that the Sonic Boom characters are off limits, since they are a different universe than the canon of the main games and shows and comics and all that stuff. So unless Stixs resurfaces soon, this is it, and I think they did a really good job given the small scale. This is a tiny figure. She's not going to work at all with any of the 5 to 6 inch Jakks stuff, but if you've been collecting since the Jazzwares line and collect the smaller Jakks figures, then, you know, she will scale just fine with those figures. Okay, moving on to my next one. I also went with a tiny figure from the tiny line here, but this one is from the Jakks Pacific line, and this is Sails, the pirate version of Tails from Sonic Prime on Netflix. Now, this was a unique pick, I gotta admit, because I was really leaning on doing 9 the robot kind of evil version of Tails here. Spoiler alert for a 2-year-old show, he's the bad guy. And everyone saw that twist coming. And he's a great character, and this figure is phenomenal. I've talked about it on my Prime videos before. The fact that each claw is fully articulated is so unbelievably amazing. But it is a Sonic Prime specific figure, so unless you're doing a Prime themed shelf, you're not going to have much need for this guy. But Tails as a pirate, come on, this is just an adorable figure. This doesn't have to be the character of Sails. This could just be Tails in a pirate uniform, and it's a great figure. I love the head sculpt, how it's different. It's got the bandana and the droopy eyes. The little arm here, like that Tails has built for himself, is just wonderful. It's got a lot of articulation, surprisingly. And the pirate cutlass he comes with comes off of his hand here, and it goes onto the little robot hand here. How cool is that? And hey, he's got a cutlass. You may recall, if you watched my Prime video, I was pretty upset that the Amy pirate figure did not have a sword of any sort, but Tails here has a pirate cutlass. Pirates are just such a popular genre that toys of pirates just always sell. And I was really shocked that this character was limited to a 3-pack that did not get very good distribution. I think this version of Tails would have been very well suited to a standard figure release because, forgive me here, but wasn't the whole point of Sonic Prime to sell toys? It felt like the entire show was one big marketing thing to sell variations on Sonic and the gang. Because, look, I get it. Sonic, Tails, Amy, Knuckles, you gotta sell them over and over again as action figures. And it's very tough to come up with variants of those characters when they really don't change costumes in the games too much. So they made this awesome show where we have, Tails as a pirate and Amy as a pirate. I just think it's such a letdown that we had prime, excuse the pun, prime opportunities for action figures that would have sold. Tails as a pirate is a figure kids would have bought even if they didn't watch the Sonic Prime show. Collectors would have ate this up. And I am a much bigger fan of the larger scale as opposed to the smaller scale. And it pains me that I have to keep around this out-of-scale figure with my display because I love the design of Tails as a pirate so much. He's just adorable with his little bandana and robot hand here. He is just really great. Okay, next up is the Toy Island Dr. Robotnik, Eggman, whatever you want to call him, from Sonic Adventure 1. This is a classic figure from the 1990s. I mean, you could tell. Look at the glossy plastic, the big chunky joints, the general lack of articulation. But man, do I love this figure so much. And to me, this is Dr. Eggman from the adventure games. It flawlessly captures the artwork used to promote the games. And sure, it doesn't look exactly like the in-game model, but damn, does it not capture the style of Sonic Adventure so well. That sense of movement, that attitude, and that edge is in the figure. Look at his pants and boots, how it's one solid flow. It's just one piece. It's amazing. This figure has kinetic movement to it that I can't explain. And if you want to see how lifeless modern stuff can be, look at the Dr. Eggman from Jakks here. Now, this figure is on a technical level so much better than this guy. You've got much modern plastic that's not shiny. The head sculpt is so much more detailed. The articulation is top notch. Look, you got the bends there in the legs, and you've got the arms. This is a technically better figure in every single way. But man, does this figure on the left not just capture the style of Sonic so much more. So you've kind of got the technically better, soulless, modern figure versus the classic adventure figure. I would love to see a balance somewhere. Maybe you could add articulation to this type of design, or do an artist series where the figures are distinctly made to look like that classic Dreamcast era artwork that is so Y2K and so popular right now. But until then, I am just fine with this figure. This is Sonic to me. This is my youth. So maybe it's my nostalgia here, but I love this design of Eggman. And also, look how big and imposing he is, this guy's so little, and when you pair him with, what's a modern Sonic here? Here we go, here's a Sonic. I don't know, he just looks non-threatening, but when you have this, There's a matchup right there. That's intimidating. That makes for a great display. And I get it, this isn't the actual scale from the games. It's not accurate. But it does look like Sonic SAT-AM, where Robotnik was like big and towering and huge, and Sonic was just small, going up against a force of evil much stronger than his own. So sometimes accuracy doesn't come first for a display. It's about the vibes, people, and the vibes are good with this Dr. Eggman. Okay, moving on. Number 6 is Cream the Rabbit. Now, this one is partially because of character choice. We only had one Cream figure before, and she was very, very expensive on the aftermarket. But this is another one where the execution is so amazing. I actually think this is Jakks' best sculpt out of any Sonic figure. It is crazy to me how much this figure looks like the game and the artwork. The paint and the colors are just so cleanly applied, and the articulation is well engineered into the figure where, you know, you have the cuts on the legs here, which allow her to, like, run, but you don't have, like, stuff going on in the arm that would hinder the aesthetics. And she looks almost like a statue or a vinyl doll, something much more premium than an action figure. I mean, look at that head sculpt. It's unreal. She also comes with an adorable accessory, being this ice cream cone here, which is totally in character and in line with Cream. And this is just a really fun inclusion. And I love that Jakks just sold this figure as is at retail. She was not a pack-in. She was not a part of a set. And that really just shows the strength of the Sonic library of characters. Because let's be honest, this is like a little toddler girl, which is not something that's going to sell in an action figure line mainly aimed at boys like, what, age 8 to 12, and then a smaller market for, like, us 20-year-old adults reliving our youth. And this figure is niche. She's just not in a lot of games at all. Like, if you didn't watch Sonic X or play the Sonic Advance games or read the Archie comics, you probably don't even know who Cream is. Now, in recent time, they have elevated her in the IDW comics. I know she's a lot more prevalent there than she ever has been before. But this figure kind of came at the beginning of that, the resurgence of Cream. And this figure was tough to find, so I recommend you track her down before she becomes rare like the previous Cream release. And she's just a fun release because she adds a lot of variety to your Sonic display. The unique colors, the fact that she's like a little kid, it's just something you don't see in the Sonic toy line, you know? If you collected previous lines, you're going to have a lot of Sonic, Shadow, Knuckles, just a lot of, like, you know, big hulking dudes. And somebody like Cream adds to the world of Sonic. And to me, as somebody that was really into the Archie comics and the SAT-AM show, I like Sonic's world. I enjoy, you'll have to forgive me for using this term, Mobius, as us old folks used to call it. I love just seeing Sonic's world. Heck, if they did a line of figures as just like Sonic random unnamed denizens, like the kind of Toontown looking dudes from the IDW comics, I would buy all of those. I love Sonic's world, and I love adding randos. So even like as somebody that didn't have the advanced games as a kid and didn't watch Sonic X, Cream is great because she's just a townsfolk for my Sonic displays, and adding her with the ice cream to any display just adds life to the Sonic line. And I mean, look at that sculpt. It's amazing. It looks so much like the character. Somebody deserves an award for this figure. Seriously impressive stuff. Okay, moving on. Next up is Chaos. Yes, I did it again. Another one that's like, wow, look at that character choice. But I could spend all day talking about how Jakks, you know, picks top-notch Sonic characters. You know, Chaos here, very important to the Sonic lore. Not in a bunch of games, but from a world-building point of view, you know, you want him for your display. But the way they did this figure is why I picked him, because I collected Star Wars toys for many years. I was a big Star Wars prequel guy. As a kid, Revenge of the Sith was like my jam, and I had all the holographic figures they did. And whenever they did holographic figures, they always chose sculpts with little articulation and made those the holographic figures, because it's very tough to do clear, translucent figures loaded with articulation, because the translucent plastic is a little cheaper. I'm no professional toy designer, this is just from my collecting experience, but clear figures tend to feel a little more brittle. Maybe there's less plastic in there, maybe I'm just losing my mind, but that seems to be the case. And then over-engineered figures with tons of articulation are going to look bad translucently because you can see the joints. And to be fair, Chaos here, you can see all of the little pegs in him. But I think they brilliantly put tons of articulation into Chaos here. They could have easily made this a 5 POA figure, and we Sonic fans would have gobbled it up, because this is a figure made for the adult collectors. This is not a kid's figure. This is one for the adults, and they just gave him all the articulation that an adult collector would want for a display. And Chaos is a figure where articulation is really important, because he's featured in a bunch of action set pieces with Sonic. So you want Sonic, running away from Chaos with those scenes. If you have, like, the Sonic Adventure Sonic here, you'll want him, speeding away from Chaos, who will be doing, like, some, dynamic attack. And Sonic can be like, oh, yeah, this is happening, right? And you can recreate Sonic Adventure, and we can all relive our youth. But another point of articulation I really love with this figure is what they did with the hands. Chaos has this thing where he's all goopy, and he's always, like, shifting, and his hands are moving a lot. And they added this one little joint here where you could rotate his little spindly, protruding fingers, I don't even know what you call them, digits? We'll just call them digits. And that one little joint is so unneeded, but it adds so much more dynamism to the display. I could really just, like, play with this figure and do some wickedly cool stuff with him. And this is what I love to see, because it's a collector piece that also has play. And I think a lot of the collector companies, naming some names here, like NECA and Super 7, they're producing some fine stuff for adults, but Jakks has that perfect balance where they know toys are meant to be played with. Any other company would have done this guy brittle, fragile, and not with articulation. But Jakks knows that we want to play with a figure like this, even if it's not going to really be bought by kids, that adults enjoy posing their figures. I love to take cool photos with my action figures, and this figure is the pinnacle of that. He's even got an extra point in the feet here that allow you to really get him to balance more. It's crazy how much articulation this guy has. He has more articulation than, like, your average Sonic figure who doesn't even have, like, full arm articulation. How crazy is that? So this figure's awesome. He was short-packed when he came out, and he is really tough to find. He has quickly become one of the most desirable figures of the Jakks Sonic line. So I am crossing my fingers that this figure gets re-released. If somebody from Jakks stumbles on this video, please re-release Chaos. He is a crowning achievement in your guys' toy design, and more people deserve to have this wickedly cool action figure. He is just friggin' awesome. Okay, so that's enough gushing about this guy here. And up next is Metal Sonic. Now, I was always going to have a bias for this character because Sonic CD is my favorite of the 2D Sonic games. I love the soundtrack. Both versions of the soundtrack are awesome. To the wickedly cool animation, to the introduction of Amy. Heck, I even love the big, confusing levels. Just to run around and play this game is a joy. And Metal Sonic got a figure from Jakks pretty early on, and I would say it is an okay figure. The articulation's fine, the sculpt is pretty decent, it's pretty good, but this figure is not worthy of being on the list. No, but Metal Sonic, thankfully, was a character that Jakks chose to revisit. Now, we got the classic version of Metal Sonic, and this one is supposed to be more faithful to the Sonic CD game itself. And I get what they were doing here. I was just talking about how we need more figures that are specific to game art styles, so I do commend Jakks for trying something different and giving us a classic version of Metal, but I think this figure is just way too chibi as opposed to the lanky proportions of the original. He almost looks like a Nendoroid figure, like, I don't know, it just doesn't scream classic. And then we got the Sonic Prime version. Granted, this is technically a different character called Chaos Sonic, but, like, come on, the family resemblance here is unreal. They definitely would meet and then get in a fight at a family reunion, that's for sure. So we have 3 unique and cool versions of Metal Sonic, and I love this character to death, and I had trouble picking one. And then I looked at my shelf and went, of course, he was looking at me the whole time. These figures, they are nothing compared to this guy right here, the shiny Metal Sonic figure. Now, if you've never seen this figure, he was exclusive to Burlington Coat Factory, of all places. I guess it's just called Burlington now. When I was a kid, it was called the Burlington Coat Factory. And they used to have a small toy department. The one near my house was 2 stories, and they had a little toy section up at the top that had, like, some unsold stuff from the G.I. Joe movie. But in recent years, they have, like, really tried to make a name for themselves with toys. They've gotten a lot of Marvel Legends, Black Series, you know, kind of like factory seconds that don't sell. But then they started getting exclusive figures. And these were like boxed premium releases. One we got here pretty early on was the Mecha Sonic. This is the original version of the figure. It's a fine figure, but it's a little light on detail. And the Burlington Coat Factory version kind of adds all of these highlights that really makes him look like a Archie Comics character. It kind of looks like what NECA has been doing with their TMNT stuff. And I thought this was a really interesting release. This was the first Burlington figure I picked up, and I'm like, okay, they're doing something really different here. They're taking risks with existing sculpts. I can appreciate that. I love a good repaint in a toy line. I don't know why more toy lines don't do repaints. Reuse your sculpts and do some wacky and weird stuff. But then we got this absolute beauty here, one of the greatest Sonic action figures I think ever. Look at this guy compared to the original. That is an insane upgrade, and it's just the paint. That's all they did. That shiny paint really makes him pop, and I don't even know how they did this. I want to say vac metal, but I don't think it's vac metallization. Vac metallization is kind of gone by the wayside. A lot of toy companies are not doing it anymore. I don't know if it's because of costs or regulation, but for whatever reason, it's been going away. But whatever they did here, it works. Let me tell you guys, it totally works, because look at that shine. He looks like a sports car. It's so friggin' cool. And Metal Sonic is a type of character that you want to look imposing and evil, and not kind of goofy and chibi like this guy. And when the matte finish becomes the shiny, it just pops, and it screams like Sega Genesis. Like, there's something so like late 90s Y2K about this. He almost looks like the version of Metal Sonic that we briefly see in Sonic Adventure for the original Dreamcast, because he has a very shiny texture in that game. It's just so shiny. The camera doesn't do it justice. You have to see this figure in person to see the reflectiveness going on here. And it just brings a sculpt to life that I thought was kind of subpar. You know, for a while I was thinking, well, maybe this figure could be a bit taller, maybe some more articulation, and then boom, shabam, you get this guy right here, and it just takes a sculpt, does a little enhancement, and makes it tenfold better. So track this guy down. He was tough to find when he came out, so I imagine he's pretty tough to find now. But you'll want him for sure, especially with Sonic 4 coming out soon, and Metal Sonic being a major antagonist. Looks like we have a whole army of Metal Sonics, so maybe you want to troop build and buy a whole bunch of these, and have Amy fight them off. Man, look how good classic Amy looks with this Metal Sonic. Like, I'm sorry, but this is not screaming Sonic CD to me. This is screaming like, I don't know, Sonic Sanrio. Like, it just doesn't work. It's chibi, and if you like chibi, you know, that's fine. It's cute. But this, right here, this is what Sonic CD should be. Metal Sonic should be scary and imposing, and Amy's ready to knock him down with a hammer like that. Very cool. So track this guy down. I imagine when Sonic 4 does get a proper trailer and announcement, this figure will become tough to find, because even if they do update him for the movie and give him like a fancy movie figure, it may not have this shininess, because it's just great. Like, I don't even know what else to say. The figure speaks for itself. This is a stunner to the eye. He looks so friggin' amazing. Okay, moving on to top 3, I went with Rouge the Bat, but I chose the smaller Rouge over the larger version, which is surprising because I consider myself a collector of the larger scale, first and foremost, and usually the larger figures have more articulation, as is the case here, and more detail, as is not the case here. So let's just look at Rouge here and see why the little one is much better than the bigger one. First off is the wings. The engineering on this figure is just not great, and it pains me to say that because this was actually the second Jakks figure I ever bought, and this was one of the figures that got me back into collecting Sonic toys, because I said on the aisle at Target when I saw this figure, if Jakks is willing to put that on the shelf, then they are willing to take a chance with Sonic and I should support that. And I was very, very excited to get this figure when it first came out. However, she has not aged too well. The wings are really loose on this figure, whereas on the little one, they're very sturdy. Now, this could just be the newer figure being something I bought a lot sooner than this one, but I don't know, like, all it takes is the little twist and the wings just pop right off. I've had many, like, photo shoots go wrong where the wings just kind of fall off the figure, whereas this one, she displays fine and the wings just don't fall at all. The other problem is the head sculpt. A big part of Rouge's character is, surprise, surprise, her makeup here. I mean, for a character literally named Rouge, like, her makeup should be good, and the lips are just not very defined on this figure at all. You can barely see her lips. Like, from most angles, you don't see them at all, which, you know, it's fine for certain characters. A lot of the Dreamcast-era characters just kind of had, like, no mouth here, you know? It was kind of cheaper to animate without the mouth. But Rouge is a character where her flirtatious lips are a big part of her character. And the new version, the smaller one, did a much better job highlighting her mouth and her lips. Another problem with Rouge is the articulation. Now, usually, more articulation is a good thing. Like, I would say 8 times out of 10. But there are those times where the articulation really takes away from a character's sculpt. And this is one of those cases. Rouge has these awkward cuts in her hands and her feet here that go right into what are supposed to be smooth outlines. Her gloves and her boots, they're smooth one pieces, kind of like that Robotnik figure I showed earlier. Look how it has flow to it. This is a Dreamcast era character, and it's supposed to be a skin-type jumpsuit. There go the wings, just like that. That was what I was talking about. It's supposed to be a skin-tight jumpsuit with a lot of flow, and the new figure does a better job of that because they're one solid piece. And I don't think this articulation is needed at all. Why would you need, like, her legs to swivel like that? I get, like, she's going to do some kicks in the air, but you could just, like, do that. There's no reason for this, and there's no reason for this. But the biggest difference between these figures, and by far the most disappointing, is the hands. This version has 2 cupped hands to hold any accessory, whereas the 4 to 5 inch version, you know, whatever you want to call the larger scale, has 1 cupped hand and 1 open hand. Now, oh, there go the wings again. See what I'm saying? But anyways, if I could design every action figure in the world, I would give them all Lego-style cupped hands, even if it's not aesthetically pleasing, because I like my action figures to hold props, and it's really fun for taking photos and also for play. So it's kind of a win-win where the kids and the collectors get something cool out of usable hands. Usable hands are just a great thing on toys. I mean, if you want hands to be sculpted in a certain pose or position, it's fine for certain characters, but, like, realistically, hands should be usable. And this figure did something really ridiculous with the hands here. She came with a heart bomb accessory, which is a Rouge-themed item, but it's not that important. Not to the point where you'd always want to display Rouge with the heart bomb. Heck, I couldn't even find my heart bomb to make this video. I know I have it. It's in one of my accessory bins somewhere, but, like, come on, that's not what I'm going to do. But what Rouge is going to hold is a diamond or an emerald, since she is the jewel thief. And this open hand can kind of hold a gem, but you really got to play with her and, like, you know, be careful like that, and it barely balances. And that's where my frustration is. Not that, you know, it'd be great if she had the 2 usable hands. I wouldn't be complaining at all. But they gave her an open hand. Why not make it so that an emerald or jewel can fit right into that hand? Make a specific chaos emerald that, like, clicks into her hand. That way it's at least useful. I get it. She's the jewel thief. You'll want her to display the jewels. The fact that we got an open hand that is made for the heart bomb and not for the emerald is, like, unforgivable. Like, what were they thinking? I don't know. It's just so very odd. Another weird thing about this figure, and this applies to both of them, is the lack of neck. She has, like, no neck, and I have a theory that this may be, like, a censorship thing. Rouge has body parts that you would not want to be exposed on a kid's aisle. You know, she's a very flirtatious and curvy female character. So my theory is that they stuck her head down low so that you didn't see her chest area, but you could just stretch out the head a little. You know, it pops off, so you just kind of, there you go. And instantly, the sculpt looks way, way better. Of course, the wings are still falling off, so I'm officially giving up on the wings. So just lift the head up a little, and yeah, she does look a bit better, but still between the two, the smaller one is much better. Also, why does the Pirate Rouge look better than the regular one? Like, this one doesn't even have lipstick on, but something about that head sculpt just looks more in line. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy and losing my mind, but I like Rouge the Bat, and my choice is the small one. I think this is a really great figure, and if we had gotten something like this during the Tomy years, things would have been different. We would all have been very, very happy. Okay, moving on to the last top two, and you know I had to go with our titular Sonic himself, or Movie Sonic. I love Movie Sonic. I actually think that Ben Schwartz is like the best Sonic we've had since Jahil White in the 90s. How about that? I think he's amazing. And for Sonic 2, we got this very nice Sonic. He also got updated and re-released with these kind of blue energy effects on him. Hey, look, it's a cool, different repaint. Austin approves. With this awesome accessory of Sonic's map from the movie with all of the references on there, like the Sega Saturn and the sun here, which is part of a old piece of concept artwork. So I can appreciate that. A deep cut figure for the fans and a unique take on our main character. But none of these compare to the best movie Sonic. And of course, I'm talking about the Movie 3 basic Sonic figure. Now, I won't say too much on this guy since pretty much every action figure channel under the sun has said this is the greatest Sonic figure ever, and I completely agree. This figure is absolutely awesome because of the amount of articulation they got into him and did not compromise the thin string bean joints of the Sonic characters. Articulation in Sonic is kind of a terrible match. In the past, there have been these Sonic figures with tons of articulation. Who remembers these Superposers figures? And they just are so brittle, and they snap the moment you play or pose with them. Because Sonic characters have these little noodle arms. You know, they don't lend themselves well to ultra-articulated figures. But the movie characters give us a little more walking room because the joints are a little thicker, they've got more muscle in them. And Jakks just nailed it by creating a figure that is ultra-articulated. There's no other way to say it. This is ultra-articulation. You can do so much and pose him in so many different ways. And this figure was sold at retail for $15. I'm sorry, Marvel Legends Maximum, is that what it's called? The fancy figures? Eat your heart out. $15, and this figure is what Hasbro would say is an ultimate deluxe version. But this is the basic Sonic figure, and he can do anything. He can run, he can jump, he can battle. This is like the ultimate figure that a kid is just going to love, and us adult collectors are going to have a field day taking photos with. I've seen so many cool, iconic Sonic poses with this figure. And a couple of things I want to mention that I actually haven't seen other people mention. The colors on this guy are much better than the movie 2 Sonic. You really can't tell on camera, unfortunately, but in person, this one is a bit darker, and this one is like a solid white almost, and it just looks so much better. I also love the head sculpt more on the new one. Even though I actually think this one is a little closer to the movie, this one's a bit more toon-like and stylized, but as a fan of Sonic SatAM, it's perfect for me because it reminds me of that classic 90s cartoon version of the character with the big pupils and the big smile. Another thing that I like as a SatAM fan is that you can finally have a Sonic where you pose him gripping the ring. Because Sonic did this thing in SatAM where he held the ring like this and he ran forward with it. SatAM had its own weird canon where they didn't have the Chaos Emeralds yet, they hadn't existed, so they kind of treated the rings like the Chaos Emeralds. Like, Sonic went super by just holding this ring in his hand and running forward. Sally also did it in the last episode. And this figure finally gives us a Sonic that can really grip the ring and hold it like the SatAM show. Another reason why I love this figure as a SatAM fan is the scaling. So, movie 2 Sonic had his own little tails here, and this is a great Tails figure. I love that they got actual, like, articulation in the arms there, you know, the tails, they hold him up and stand him. This is a great figure. He almost made the list, but I excluded him in favor of the pirate tails, because I thought it was more interesting. But as a pairing, you know, they make for a nice display, and they do scale nicely, because in the movies, Tails and Sonic there's only a little bit of a height difference, but in the classic SatAM cartoon, Tails was portrayed as much, much younger than he is in the games. He's almost like the cream character of the SatAM show. He was like a little toddler that barely accompanied Sonic on his missions. He was more like a little brother figure to Sonic. He was there to add some humanity to the show, to show you that, there's innocence on Mobius worth saving, right? And the movie 2 Sonic and the movie 3 Sonic, when paired together, give us a very nice set of SatAM-esque characters. They scale just like the SatAM versions, so this is what I choose to display as my Sonic and Tails. I am not one of those people that is a diehard to the games or, all the different comic continuities. I just like Sonic, okay? But to me, Sonic is that SatAM show put in a blender with the adventure games and the comics. When I was a kid, I had the SatAM DVDs, the comics, and the games, and I never really considered all of the different canons and timelines. To me, it was all just Sonic. So this interpretation of the characters, to me, is a nice combination of all of the Sonics. You've got the bright blue from the Genesis games. You've got the head sculpt that looks a little more in line with the comics. You've got the fact that he can grip the ring. Pairing these two together reminds me of what Sonic and Tails is. The big brother protecting the little brother. They just look great next to each other. This is a fantastic Sonic figure. He can do everything, and he's affordable, so what's not to love? Pick this one up if you haven't, even if you're not a Sonic diehard, but if you aren't, what are you doing watching this much of the video? Anyways, you need it for your action figure collection. If you literally had to pick one Sonic figure to have in your collection, this is the one to have. But moving on to my number one choice. While this Sonic is absolutely perfect, it is not a game Sonic figure. It is a movie Sonic figure. So I had to go with a game Sonic for number one. And recently, Jakks Pacific released this Sonic, and I was really excited to pick up this figure because he was my most wanted Sonic figure. I had mentioned before that if I could get any figure on the Sonic line, it would be this one right here. Sonic the Hedgehog with his high-speed shoes, also known as the soap shoes. It's called the Soap Shoes Sonic in the fandom. And why was this figure so legendary? Well, it's because a company called Soap that did skater shoes sponsored Sonic Adventure 2 for the GameCube. So for that one game, Sonic had these branded skater shoes that allowed him to grind down railings. And it was a big advertisement for these shoes where if you wore them in real life, you could theoretically grind down railings in public places. Yeah, it sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen. And the shoes did not last long. But we did get this figure with the shoes on. It's a great figure, but I'm not going to pick it as my number one because I have a gripe with this figure. It's that the shoes are awesome. They look just like the game. Really props to Jack for recreating these shoes after so many years. But the shoes are just stuck on a modern Sonic buck. This is in fact the same Sonic that's been released over and over again just with a new pair of shoes. I was really hoping they would update the sculpt because in the adventure games, Sonic does not quite look like his modern self. He looks a little off-model because of the Dreamcast models. Now, there was a toy company called Toy Island that did make a Sonic figure that was more like the Dreamcast era. You can see how kind of off-model he is compared to the more modern Sonic. His eyes are much bigger, he's got bigger pupils, he's kind of got this smile that's a little more to the side and is almost in a Nike swoosh. It just looks different. The quills are a bit longer, his tail's longer. Point is, it's a different version of Sonic. But I'm not going to pick this figure as my number one because while I do love some of the figures from this line, like the Eggman I mentioned, and I also have to give a shout out to Knuckles and Tails here, these are wonderful, big, chunky 90s action figures. The Sonic, his body is plastic, but his head is a squishy vinyl. And I don't know why they did that because if you look at Knuckles and Tails here, they're all shiny plastic, They look great. But Sonic here, he almost looks like a custom kit bash. You can see the shine and reflectiveness on the body, even more so off the camera. And the matte finish of the head. The blue, isn't even the right color. It distinctly goes to a different color of blue from the head down to the body. That has always really bothered me with this figure. And they re-released this figure over and over again, so maybe one of the re-releases fixes it, but I don't know, man. It just doesn't do it for me. Not like the other figures in this line do. We're going to have to go back even further to the very first line of toys for Sonic Adventure. And that is this guy right here. Now, this is what I'm talking about. This is the very first Sonic Adventure figure released from ReSaurus Toys in the 1990s. Now look at this guy compared to the supposed Dreamcast figure from Jakks Pacific. Now, he doesn't have the soap shoes because this is a Sonic Adventure 1 figure and this is a Sonic Adventure 2 figure. But it doesn't matter because Dreamcast Sonic all look the same. And the soap shoes should really be on a sculpt that looks like this. This is that in-between era where he's not quite modern and not quite classic. This is like the lost era of Sonic toys for companies because they're really doing a good job supporting the classic Sega Genesis Sonic. I mean, so much so that they're even doing like that strange metal Sonic figure I mentioned. I love it. I love seeing, era-specific Sonic toys. And then the modern versions, they look nice, but they're substituting modern sculpts for Dreamcast designs, when the Dreamcast designs have their own unique flavor to them that should not be lost. This is a disservice to the artist of, and I hope I'm getting your name right, Yuji Uekawa, I hope I got that right, who designed the original Sonic redesigns, all that iconic 2000s artwork that we associate with the Y2K aesthetic. Heck, it's been on the background of this entire video. It's the blanket I use. It is synonymous with Sonic the Hedgehog, and I would love to see an artist series that pays tribute to his style. But until then, we actually did get a full line of figures that beautifully replicates his style, that is to scale with the modern Sonic Jakks figures, and that is the ReSaurus Sonic figure. So my number one pick is Sonic here because this figure is so distinct and so cool looking. I love the quills. Again, there's that motion I keep talking about. Look at that. To the feet, look how they're curved. It's like he's running. And something freaking awesome about this figure is you can pose his arms out like that, and you have to be really gentle with this guy because those limbs are so brittle. And you have to move his legs like that, and you actually can recreate the iconic poster artwork for Sonic Adventure. How friggin' cool is that? So this figure is just absolutely goated in my eyes. And we did also get Knuckles and Tails. Heck, they made the whole crew, but they're really, really rare and expensive, so I don't have them. I found these three guys here at a flea market. I think I paid $5 for all three of them. Yeah, that was probably my greatest flea market find ever, at least from a monetary value. That was crazy, but it does happen, look out in the wild and you do find this stuff. Tails looks great. I love how for Tails here, he's got that tuft of hair to the side. It's not right in the front like it should be. So it's when you pose him, it looks more in line with the artwork. And I just think that is so amazing and so neat. Now, these figures are made out of a really weird material. I don't even know what to classify it as. I remember reading somewhere online back in the day that these were metal, and holding them in person, no, they're not die cast, but they're not quite plastic either. It's some sort of brittle resin type material. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe it's just aged plastic that's been in storage for 25 years, but it feels really brittle. This does feel like a NECA or Super 7 figure. Remember what I was talking about with Chaos, how this guy's really sturdy? Yeah, this guy's the opposite. It's definitely not for children. And these toys were not sold to kids when they came out. These were distinct adult collector figures. It's interesting that after Sonic's successful run with TV shows and comics that they would market the first line of action figures as an adult collector line, but they did a good job, They're fragile, they're brittle, but the sculpt alone makes these number one pick, They just ooze with charm and character. And sure, you could have, a figure that is a direct scan of the in-game model that looks amazing. And I'm still going to pick this guy any day of the week because of the attitude this guy has. He just looks so great. Oh, and one more thing. The accessories these guys come with are great. The rings are vac metallized. They're shiny rings. So going back to that movie Sonic, I was so excited he could grip the ring. Replace that ring with this one, and you've got something more in line with Sonic Sat-I-Am. But whether you like Sat-I-Am or Sonic Adventure, you've got to admit that these guys are really cool, and they just ooze charm of the 2000s and the 90s. I mean, they're just so great. Look at Tails here. I love how his legs are not flush. They're always going to be uneven because he's taking flight. And his tail actually holds him up so he looks like he's flying. How freaking cool is that? So those figures are great, Knuckles and Tails. But number one is Sonic. This is the best Sonic figure ever made. Unfortunately, he's very rare. I would love to see a new take on this design of Sonic. Imagine if Jakks tried a fully posable Sonic. They call it like the UG Art Series, and it's distinctly made to recreate that art with all of the hyper articulation. I think that would be honestly really amazing. So there you have it. Lots of Sonic figures from lots of different eras. I know this was a bit of a long one, a lot of rambling, but I love toys and action figures. To me, probably the best part about Sonic is now collecting the toys. How crazy is that? I had a point in my life where I sold all of my Sonic figures because collecting this line was frustrating. And now we're at a point where I enjoy collecting Sonic. And I'm going back and I'm collecting the old stuff because I'm having fun with it. And I have to thank Jakks Pacific for that. They brought back the fun in collecting toys with Sonic. I would say Sonic is one of the best toy lines you could collect right now. If you're a toy guy and you like cartoons and toys, you need to look into Sonic. Watch the movies, play the games. It's a great license, and all of this stuff, with the exception of these ReSaurus figures, can be found relatively cheap. You know, this figure is still available at stores at the time of this video for $15, and it's amazing. So that was my top 10 Sonic action figures that will probably be outdated as I collect more and as this line gets better and better as time goes on. But let me know in the comments what your top 10 Sonic figures are from all Sonic lines. There's a lot of old stuff I didn't cover here that isn't in my collection, so let me know what stuff I need to go back and track down. But until then, that's all I've got for today. And usually I say you should have a happily ever after, but considering we're talking about the blue blur here, well, all I can say is to keep collecting Sonic toys, open your heart to collecting something new, and maybe you'll live and learn a little. I finally found you, Faker. I'll make you eat those words. Faker? Who you calling Faker? Faker? Who you calling Faker? Faker? Who you calling Faker? Faker? Who you calling Faker?
I'll make you eat those words. Faker. I'll make you eat those words. I'll make you eat those words. Who you calling Faker? Faker.
Who you calling Faker?
Who you calling Faker? I'll make you eat those words. I'll make you eat those words. I'll make you eat those words. I'll make you eat those words.
Am I in heaven?